What's going on YouTube? Got another build guide for you today. This one I've actually been having a lot of fun with. This is arguably the most fun build that I've created so far. Basically, this build just tears through maps. If you want to farm up some currency and some items and you want to get it done really quickly, this is the build. It's insanely fun. You almost never have to use your basic skill, which I think is kind of cool. You can basically just cruise through with Flurry and just rotate through your 3 imbuments and just let it rip. It's a lot of fun. You explode packs, victimize. We get more explosions out of that. Basically, this build was designed just to map quickly, kind of have a Path of Exile style feel to it, of being able to just explode whole screens at once and just detonating things. Excuse me. So let's just get right into it, and we'll try to make this one a little bit quicker this time. So start out with the board, puncture, which we don't use very often, like I said, but for when we do, if we get a little bit of vulnerability here for a boss or something like that, so we do like that still. Moving into our core skills, we obviously take Flurry. We have +4 on our gloves, so we're at 9, and then we take Enhanced Flurry and Improve Flurry. This can be nice too if you need the crowd control. We have so much crowd control elsewhere that it's not necessarily necessary. So we like the vulnerability. We take 2 into Siphoning Strikes just to add a little bit more health gain. Kind of help us face tank a little bit while we're in massive packs. And then we just take the 1. Obviously, close damage reduction is nice, but we just mainly take it so we can get a little bit of life. We put 1 point into Shadow Step. Mainly, we just want this to get in or out of a pack, and then for unstoppable reasons. We use Penitent Boots, so we want to daze enemies, and we have that as one of our aspects, and that drops our cooldown a 1.5 seconds. So every time you daze an enemy, it basically cuts it in half. And then you can your uptime on your dash is it's up most of the time, so long as you're hitting enemies. And then we have Weapon Mastery. We have 3 points in, and then we get 3 from our Amulet, giving us a total of 6. We use a crossbow, so we get that 30% times increase critical strike damage, so that's big damage. If you're using a bow, increased damage to vulnerable enemies is nice too. Then we come down here in the subterfuge area. We just take 3 in agile just for some dodge while we're in close, and we're always on cooldown, so this is up most of the time. Coming down here, we put a couple points into Shadow Imbuement just because it does have damage inherently in the skill. And then we come into Poison Imbuement. We have a few points here, but this one kind of needs the least amount of help. So we get 4 points on these 2 for our helmet. I think ideally we would get all 3, but Poison's pretty good on its own with just its normal nodes. So we put the least into that for now. If you really wanted to optimize this, getting this on the helmet would be nice. But then we take Enhanced Shadow Imbuement and Mixed Shadow Imbuement. This is a nice one just because you increase all damage that's non-fizz for 8 seconds, which is a long time. And our cooldown on our imbuement is about 7 to 8 seconds. So long as you're using your Shadow Imbuement, this should be up most of the time. Poison, duration, obviously, and then we crit so often. We want the crit strike one. It might be beneficial to spec into Lucky Hit. On this build, we use it a lot, so this might be okay. But I think with the amount of crit we do, the blended poison is better. And then on cold, again, we only have 1 point allocated so that we can move to blended cold imbuement. And this is just to instantly freeze, a little more crowd control. This node, this is probably one of the best nodes in this whole tree right here, Frigid Finesse. It's just massive damage, and if you're running Penitent Boots, everything's always chilled and all that. So it's really nice. This is a huge damage boost. Coming down to the ultimate area, we do not take an ultimate. We just take all the small passives here that we can for Lucky Hit. These are really nice just for helping us proc some of our Lucky Hit stuff. And then we take 2 in Adrenaline Rush for the energy regeneration. 3 might be better, but it's sufficient for now. And then we take all 3 in Haste so we can get that movement speed. And then lastly, we're using Victimize so that we can get those explosions to just kind of help chain kills and stuff like that. Okay, moving to the Paragon. This is fairly similar to my my older boards. I got a really good base that I was happy with, and it's been really easy to make small changes and kind of update the build. So, in my opinion, get yourself a really strong base. There's plenty of them out there, some more optimized than others, and then alter your tree to be most suitable for your build or what you're trying to do. Right? Excuse me. So now, moving in. So this is a massive one. I mean, 115% damage to crowd-controlled enemies. So that's chilled, dazed, stunned, frozen, all of those different things. So we do a massive amount of damage, and then the additional bonus is 10 times increased damage to chilled or slowed, and then 20% to stunned or frozen. We have enemies chilled, slowed, stunned, and frozen a lot. So this is a lot of damage. We take both rare nodes. Again, it's just you don't necessarily have to, but because this is an intelligence based glyph, we're up here anyways, and this is we get a little armor here, but you could probably lose all three of these and save yourself a couple points somewhere else depending on how your armor and whatnot is. Next board, our next board, is Eldritch Bounty. We obviously go all the way through that, and we take all the rare nodes on the way up. Our glyph, we take cutthroat damage. It's fully leveled. All of these are fully leveled up to 21, so you're getting the max damage. This is a dex-based glyph, so these are always really nice just because dex is our main stat, and that gives us damage. So you're stacking damage with dex, but then you're also getting damage out of your glyph. So this is a really nice one. And so then actually we don't take this board, we take this board next. And here we have Tricks of the Trade, and this just because we're using a marksman and a cutthroat, we basically always have 25% increased damage. We do not use our basic skill very often, so I really only use this against bosses and armored elites and stuff like that when I'm actually need a basic skill, but 95% of the time we don't use our basic skill. This is just helpful for some of the more difficult bosses when you do need to use it, and you can proc this. Glyph, we take Xplode. Obviously, this is probably the most important glyph in the game for probably every build, most of them for sure. And then that just gives us our guaranteed vulnerability. I do want to stress that I get that it says that this cannot happen more than once every 20 seconds per enemy, but that is the application of vulnerability through this glyph. You can still apply it as often as you need to with other forms of application. So don't think you can only apply it once every 20 seconds. It can only be applied once every 20 seconds from this form, if that makes sense, from this glyph. If you have it on your puncture, you will still be able to proc it with that as often as you would be able to. It is not affected by this 20-second cooldown. So that's just just keep that in mind. Don't think that you can only have vulnerability on enemies for 20 seconds and then that's it. Next, we move over to exploit weakness. We might be able to, if we took those 3 points out of the first board and then we lost Cutthroat, this might be more beneficial, to be honest. And then I think we could get there pretty easily with that amount of points. But I'll leave that up to you. Now looking at it, this would be a very feasible option that would probably be more consistent, but might not help you as much against single target DPS, which is what this build is focused on, killing mobs and big packs, not bosses. So it does take a little bit longer to kill a boss, and if you're trying to full clear, this node is helpful, but this would probably be better for mapping and in general. Here we take efficacy to get that 125% bonus to rare nodes. That's mainly for artifice. Just massive vulnerability damage. We like that. And then obviously imbuement skill effects to have 20% increased potency, which stack with our main aspect on our weapon, taking us to 100% increased potency on all imbuements. So this is a really nice glyph. Obviously we get 18%, and the 22 dex is really nice, but mainly we use efficacy just to boost this this rare node, and then we take a little bit more vulnerability here, and then you get a little bit more vulnerability here. So this is a really nice source for vulnerability, especially along with exploit. Then our next board, we have Cunning Stratagem. We don't use combo points, so we don't come all the way up here. We're mainly just using this for the glyph socket, and then we get some really nice core skill damage. If you want to, you can spec over to this, which is some more core skill. Kind of just depends. My damage is, I'm pretty happy with it. I spec'd into some survivability things in place of this. But for, you know, six points, that's a lot of damage. So and then lastly, our last board is we take No Witnesses, ultimate skill. We obviously don't use an ultimate, but it has a couple really nice damage rare nodes in it, critical strike there. So we come up to that. I actually think I chose this over dominant, just to get the crit, and then just kind of those big hits on healthy enemies when the pack is fresh. And in our glyph socket, we have combat. This just gives us critical strike damage with our core skills, and then restore some energy cost, which is massive for this build because we rarely use our basic skill. We want a lot of regen and recovery on energy. So now going to the skill tree. I'm sorry, the gear. We'll start at the helmet, and this is the helmet I've been using for a while. It's been very difficult to replace, but Shadow Cold cooldown reduction is massive. You're going to want that on your amulet and your helmet and your pants. So you can get it twice on your amulet. You can get imbuement skill cooldown reduction and cooldown, and you'll kind of have to decide if you need both or not. We'll get to that though. So, and then again, obviously the aspect, gain 0.45% armor. This stacks really quickly, especially with the poison ticks. You max this out really quickly. So that's a really nice defensive aspect. Next, we come down to dealing direct damage to vulnerable enemies, has a 43% chance to daze. That helps us with our cooldown on our penitent, and it also is crowd control, so we do more damage to those enemies. 43%, you know, that's a lot, that procs a lot. Max rolls 45. So essentially 1 out of every 2 enemies, 1 out of every 3 for sure. So, and then next we move into our gloves. These are pretty standard. +4 to flurry, that's the most important, and then just attack speed, crit strike chance, and then the crit strike damage with imbued was just a nice addition, but you might, you know, have some stats or something that you prefer there, dex or all stats or whatever the case may be. On to pants, this is where we get a lot of our survivability, damage reduction, there's our big imbuement skill cooldown reduction, and just some dodge chance. Dodge is really nice. I think we've got ours up to like 23% or something, so 1 out of every 4 attacks you dodge, which is pretty nice. And then the explosions from victimize key passive heal you for 197. This is just some more life. This one I haven't decided how big it really is, but it seems to be good for survivability. Damage reduction, basic skills for damage reduction for 6 seconds, whatever. I had that on originally, but again, because I use my basic skills so infrequently, it didn't feel like it was as good as getting this life back. And then we move on to Penitent. These are max rolled. This just, you know, drop to chilled ground helps us. Anything close by is chilled at the very least, whether we're using our cold imbuement or not. So these are really nice. I did like having more evade charges, but I found that with high movement speed and just kind of walking into the center of a pack, blowing it up, walking out, these are enough. And then again with our daze enemy small passive that we take, you reduce that cooldown, so it helps that evade be up most of the time anyways. Our weapon, big dex, big all stats, core damage, and vulnerability is really nice. And then our aspect and imbuement skills have 80% increased effect. So with the 20% on the glyph, you know, we're at 100%. Our amulet, we throw, and this one here, I could think you could go either way with it by putting flurry on your weapon and then imbuement on your amulet, but this felt better to me for whatever reason. Maybe it felt like more damage, whatever. But amulet, we want more movement speed, energy cost reduction, and cooldown reduction are the stats we really want. And then obviously weapon mastery is just a great bonus. +3 to imbuement skills might be better, but this feels pretty good, so that's what we're using. Here, this is a big aspect for maintaining our energy. Restore 4 energy when you crowd control an enemy. So we're crowd controlling constantly just by walking near enemies with Penitent. Plus we have chill and freeze, and you know, daze and all those sorts of things. So this this really helps keep your energy up. And I believe you can craft it on from one of the dungeons, but it's only one, which might be okay, but you know, the more you can get here, the better. And then as far as rolls go, pretty standard: critical strike chance, critical strike damage, vulnerability, and lucky hit. And then the next one, similar except with life. So life, vulnerable, crit chance, and crit strike damage. And then here we have killing a vulnerable enemy grants you 50% increased energy regen. So again, just helps us not need to use our basic skill as much. Coming down to our weapon, we just go big attack speed, but for our aspect, core skills increase your attack speed by 24% up to 25. And then as far as rolls, crit, core skill, all stats, dex, vulnerability, any of those combinations is fine. And then we use Ashira's just again for more attack speed so that we can really pump out those flurries and just hit a lot. Even if we get to a point where our imbuments are down, we can just really go hard with flurry, and this allows us to do that. There's a fine line between using a well-rolled legendary with, like, you know, I don't know, primary resource, increased damage, stuff like that. But for now, this felt pretty good, especially for mapping. If you want to do a little bit harder content, this can easily run low 50s nightmare dungeons without any problems. When you start getting into the high 50s and the 60s, you do start running into some survivability issues. So you know, take that as you will. I did feel like my survivability was a little bit better with a slightly stronger sword here, just because I had a little bit more damage. But again, you don't have the attack speed. I'm trying to explode screens and just run through. So this felt really nice. So that's about it, guys. You know, if you are running harder content, I feel like the attack speed or the crit strike chance elixirs are really nice for this build. As you can see, you've got a ton of attack power. Life's pretty good. We've moved over to the topaz for damage reduction while control impaired. It feels better than the life, just because it seems like most of my deaths come from when I'm control impaired. So, you know, you got 5 of those in there. That's 50% damage reduction when those things are going on. So it feels really good. And then weapons, you know, everything's always vulnerable, crit strike damage. And then gems, we go skulls. Lastly, specializations. We're actually using inner sight, which feels really good and just allows us, you know, every so often to just have an unlimited amount of energy, and it also fills it up. So if, you know, when you're really getting going, this procs, and it feels really nice. I did not end up going with the board, just because the Paragon board for inner sight, just because it just didn't feel like the rare nodes were very good, and the 100% dodge chance while it's up sounds really nice, and that would be really nice, I think, but I don't think it's worth losing a board that has all this damage and crit strike and stuff on it. So that's the reason behind that. It might feel really good. You know, maybe up here when we're not really taking it much of anything, you know, it might work out nicely here and just get that main node, but you know, then you lose a glyph. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like and a comment, subscribe, all that. I've been having a lot of fun making these guides. I think I'm going to move over back to my barbarian and try that out and get ready for season 1. But if you have any questions, I've been streaming every day just to try to, you know, kind of get all this stuff rolling. So all your support, you know, I really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope to see you soon. And thanks for watching, guys.